우회전하세요. 오른쪽 차선 유지 후에 계속해서 직진하세요. 직진하세요.
Again, the SNP, who was the first cast to vote, came to kind of win almost everything. But because we have a PR system, we have fair representation of some of the lesser parties. So I think it's just to acknowledge that. You said something which was about, this is, I've heard it said a couple of times, this is the demise and the SNP is crumbling. And, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's politics.
Well, it is politics, but it certainly appears that way from down here. I think you'd have to be far stretched to suggest that there isn't a certain challenge and a certain crisis being posed to something like this right now. Liz, we have to leave it there. Thank you for your call. I have run out of time. If you missed any of today's show, I'll be back tomorrow. But you can listen back and catch up on Global Player, the official LBC app. You can also pause on Rewind Live Radio. You'll also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as the world's biggest podcasts. Pause and Rewind Live Radio on LBC's official app, Global Player. Download for free from your app store. Head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 10 on LBC, it's Matt Fry. But now, it's time for Weekend Breakfast with Matthew Wright.
Nice one, Ollie, and congrats on your university address. Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday the 27th of April. You listen to me, Matthew Wright, here with your Weekend Breakfast. Coming up today,
when it comes to knife crime, a London problem or it's a ethnic problem. Come on, too many young people are dying from this.
Idris Elba there suggesting the government cares more about XL bullies than knife crime. Plus, less than a week after the government's crackdown on long-term sick benefit claimants, the King has decided to make his return to royal duties. Thank goodness. First, though,
he is so obsessed and so focused on independence. People I'm speaking to are worried about the health service, the education system, the justice system.
As Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf fights to save his career, has he only got himself to blame for his predicament? Or is he a bit like Rishi Sunak, a casualty of a party that's been in power for way too long? 0345 6060 973 is the number. Give us a call.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
직진하세요.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Prime Minister has said it's brilliant news that the King is returning to public duties for next week. Buckingham Palace confirmed yesterday that he'd be resuming his engagements 3 months after revealing he'd been diagnosed with cancer. Dr. Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, says returning to work is
왼쪽으로
important.
나가세요.
Go and do what you've done before. That's what I tell all my patients. It's the best treatment. It doesn't have to be a job. It could be looking after grandchildren. It could be a family. Just getting back to some sort of normality, doing what you like doing and what you're good at. is the best therapy out for the mind.
The Foreign Office has summoned the Russian ambassador following allegations a British man arranged arson attacks on Ukrainian-linked businesses in London. It's claimed 20-year-old Dylan James Earl was working for the Wagner Group, a proscribed terror organisation. He's one of 5 men charged under the National Security Act. A British tourist is in intensive care after being attacked by a shark in the Caribbean. It's understood the 64-year-old is receiving treatment for injuries to his left arm, left leg and stomach. Tobago's government has closed 7 beaches and a marine park as a precaution. 2 teachers who were injured in a stabbing at a school in West Wales have said it's difficult to understand what happened. They were attacked along with a teenage pupil on Wednesday. LBC reporter Thomas Rogers has more.
Fiona Elias, who's the head teacher at Ammon Valley School in Ammanford, and Liz Hopkin, who's a special needs coordinator, avoided serious injuries in the attack. But the experience has had a profound impact on them. In a statement released on Friday, they say they're struggling to comprehend what happened and say it's something no pupil should have to witness. Both, though, say they owe a huge debt to the emergency services who arrived within minutes.
A 13-year-old girl has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Research suggests black and minority ethnic women are twice as likely to be on 0-hours contracts as white men. The TUC, which collated the data, says this is a prime example of structural racism in action. The government says 0-hours contracts offer flexibility for people who may need to balance work around personal commitments. And Leicester secured their return to the Premier League last night, despite not actually playing. This after Leeds United were beaten 4-0 by QPR, meaning Leeds stay 4 points behind Leicester.
LBC Weather.
With Ripple Energy, part-owner wind farm for a greener way to power your home.
Cloudy and wet in Wales, central and southern England, sunny spells and showers elsewhere, but feeling chilly with a high of 13 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Jenny Marsby.
Imagine, it's Saturday. 1 minute you're lying on the sofa, horizontal, in your pyjamas, trying to guess which celeb is dressed up as a singing chicken, eyeing up the last sweet and sour pork roll. And the next, corn crackers, you're a millionaire. Lotto, will you be next? Play on app, the National Lottery. Account terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Matthew Wright.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, one and all. I can't deny being a sort of fatalist by nature. The fact that I've broken my belt seconds before I've come on air and my trousers are ill-fitting now. I'm not going to take that as too worrying an omen. Sticking with notions of a bad news. A huge round of applause and congratulations to Liz Truss, star of the pop cons, the Popular Conservatives, whose book about her record-breaking 49-day stint as Prime Minister has rocketed all the way up to a dismal 70th place in the latest bestsellers list after selling an astonishing 2,228 copies in the UK during its first week in stores. As many as that, 2,228, and this despite the Guardian critic warning readers the book, snappily titled 10 Years to Save the West, Lessons from the Only Conservative in the Room, was, quote, one of the most shamelessly unrepentant, petulant, politically and economically jejune and cliche-written books I've ever read. Ouch. Now then, I was tempted, I have to admit, I was tempted to kick off this morning's debate by asking if Scotland's First Minister would do better to resign. But his determination to cling to power, however grim the consequences, remind me of another contemporary leader who, like Yusuf, has yet to win a mandate from the people, who perhaps is representative of a party that's been in power too long. And yes, I'm thinking of Rishi Sunak. So the question I'm going to kick off with this morning, that I want you to wrestle with, is are Humza Yousaf and Rishi Sunak what happens when one party's been in charge, running the shop almost unchallenged for way too long? And if you are minded to agree with that assertion, then I guess we should spare a thought for Vaughan Gething, the Welsh First Minister, because Labour has now been in power, I think, in Wales for 25 years, something like that. Anyway, Humza Yousaf and Rishi Sunak, both men have their qualities, their flaws, political views. Neither have won a mandate for the people as suggest speaks volumes. I read one Tory supporting paper, I think the Times yesterday, speculating that Youssef wouldn't resign because no one in Scotland could tolerate having a second unelected leader foisted on the plebs. Hello? Don't they know who's holed up in number 10 down here? Anyway, if you believe what you read in the right-wing press, you'll know that many Tory MPs are openly plotting to remove Rishi Sunak before the next election, whenever that may be, and therefore potentially give us a third leader without a mandate from you and other voters. Both Youssef and Sunak, one might argue, really only have themselves to blame for the situation they find themselves staring into the political abyss, wondering how to manage what's left of their political careers. Sunak, I would argue, for failing to deliver his key pledges. Youssef for exposing himself to a vote of no confidence by falling out with the SNP's Green partners in government. And there's plenty more gone wrong. I mean, the SNP's hate crime act, as callers were saying to Ollie just a few minutes ago, that's been a risible disaster, like almost everything our Prime Minister down here touches in Westminster. Both men have flip-flopped on net zero ambitions. They're both tanking in the opinion polls, as are their respective parties. A week back, the Scottish First Minister's net approval rating dropped close to that of Rishi Sunak. I think Youssef showed 15 points and fell to minus 32%, while Prime Minister Rishi Sunak actually increased his rating from an historic low of minus 45% to a slightly less dismal minus 35%. This was last weekend. And what I want to hear from you this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is whether it's the man that's the problem. I don't even know if you're allowed to say man in Scotland anymore. I hope so. No offence intended anyway. But is it the politician, the individual, that is the problem here? Or is it, as I suspect, more to do with their respective parties being in power too long? 14 years for the Tories, isn't it? It's like 17 years for the SNP. My generation has witnessed two Westminster parties hold power over 3 lengthy periods. The Tories, with Thatcher and Major, they covered 18 years, from 79 to 97. Labour from 97 to 2010 with Blair and a bit of Brown. And then the last 14 years of the Tories both in coalition and flying solo. Apart from, I suppose, Macmillan in the 1950s, there hasn't been such a long run of one party holding power for so long in the last 120 years or so. John Major, he presided over a collapsing party discipline, sleaze oozing from every corner of Tory Westminster. Labour, they enjoyed more than 10 years of fair weather economically speaking, but failed to spread that good cheer to its traditional voting bases, and ended up paying the price in subsequent polls for taking that red wall support for granted. But after their parties had been in power for 14 years and 17 years respectively, I'm not surprised Sunak and Youssef are on the ropes. Indeed, it would be pretty astonishing, I think, for either man to be knocking it in the back of the neck, politically speaking, when polls show a growing dissatisfaction, not just with them as individuals, but for their parties too. I think Labour 2 weeks ago were polling ahead of the SNP for the first time in nigh on a decade. And as we know, Labour leading the Tories by some margin down here across the country. So I suppose one of the things we might all agree on is we deserve an election. But for Youssef and Sunak, is it their personality, is it their individuality that's the problem, or their parties being in power too long? 03456060973 is the number. Well, Andy Sajinsky is LBC Scotland's correspondent, and I'm delighted to say I'm speaking to him first. Morning, Alan. Perhaps you could explain why Youssef finds himself in such a pickle today.
Yes, well, a pickle is an understatement, isn't it? Because his future is now very much hanging in the balance. I think, just to briefly touch on what you say there, this goes back further than the week of chaos that we've had. When he came into his role a year ago, he really was taking on a bit of a poison chalice. I think that would be fair to argue. He was taking over the SNP party that was more divided than it had been perhaps in any time in its history. Nicola Sturgeon, Alex Salmond's famous falling out, of course, the independence movement at a crossroads, and again the alliance with the Greens was already on the ropes. Differences, cracks were starting to emerge in terms of climate change targets, in terms of gender recognition reforms as well. So this has gone on for a while, but in the last weeks, well, certainly in the last 2 days, Matthew, it has been chaotic in the Scottish Parliament. We've had screeching U-turns from Humza Yousaf. We've had bitter press conferences. We even had an MSP crying on the radio last last night, and as I say, Humza Yousaf, whose job remains on a knife edge, and his fate is seemingly still in the hands of Alex Salmond's Alaba party. There's an irony in there, isn't there? Because their one MSP, Ash Regan, is still placed to have the deciding vote in a no-confidence motion against him to be heard next week. And that's after the Greens that he chucked out of government said that they would back it. But not only has Humza Yousaf told me yesterday, I spoke to him in Dundee, that he's prepared to fight this motion, that he's not even thought about resigning beforehand. He's actually suggested that this is all more of a Hollywood bubble story. Have a listen to what he told me.
I'm out here delivering on the priorities of the people. £80 million towards affordable housing, while the opposition are just playing silly political games.
You're talking about affordable. It seems that the entirety of Scotland is talking about your position. How can you say you're not considering it?
I don't think that's actually the case. I think most people are worried about the cost of living crisis. They're worried about health. They're worried about housing. They're worried about supporting businesses. That's what they're worried about. They're concerned about, not about political games from the opposition. So I'll let them play the games that they're going to play. But it's also worth writing to we're debating to all the party leaders that are represented in the Scottish Parliament to say to them, let's meet, let's discuss how we go to government and we get people to government to work.
So it seems his big plan there then to get through this vote, Matthew, is to write to the party leaders, see if he can change their minds. I'd be amazed if the Greens did that now after how angry they were. Will Alaba's Ash Regan remains to be seen, but he would need to offer her something. But in doing so, that might annoy his own MSPs to the point that they then turn against him. What I can tell you is Labour, the Lib Dems, that they are very unlikely to be swayed, and so are the Conservatives. Here's their leader, Douglas Ross.
The only letter I want to see from Humza Yousaf is one announcing his resignation. His obsession with independence has left our economy and public services worse off. The Scottish Conservative vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf will go ahead. And my party is urging every MSP disillusioned with his dismal leadership to back it.
And worth just mentioning as well, Matthew, that there is actually a second motion of no confidence that's been brought by Labour, not just in Humza Yousaf, but in his entire government. And while that's less likely to pass, if it were to, that could domino us into staring down the barrel of 2 elections in Scotland in just 1 year.
Alan Zazinski, thank you very much for that. Listening to that is Neil Hanvey MP, the Alaba Party Westminster leader, MP for Kirkcaldy. Good morning to you, Neil.
Good morning, Matthew.
Of the 2 motions that he faces, let's say we'll just go for the first one, just his position. If he was to go, do you think the Scottish people would tolerate having another leader given to them without a mandate, without a vote from the people?
I think that would be a very difficult argument to win in terms of the public debate. But it's difficult to predict. I think that the assertion from Humza Yousaf in the tape you played a moment ago, that no one in Scotland is talking about this as a Hollywood bubble story, is so far removed from the truth of the matter. It's quite staggering. I mean, this is the talk of Scotland. So the idea, given everything that's happened in the year since Nicola Sturgeon resigned, and I have some sympathy for Humza Yousaf in some respects. He's inherited the consequences of many poor decisions that were made by the former First Minister, who was more obsessed with headlines than the detail of policy and delivery. And so, he's not exactly had an easy run of it in the first year, but he's got himself into a real difficult place.
Is it?
Now.
Is it? I don't want to make out too much of my personal obsession, but I am fascinated by long periods of power, because my generation, our generation, we've seen a lot of it in the UK.
Yeah.
Do you think, I'm also going to have a view about the SNP because of the party you represent, but do you think this is more symptomatic of a party that's been in power too long, that just like the Tories are having down south, just like previous Labour administrations and previous Tory Westminster governments when they've had long periods in power, it just seems inevitably things go wrong, badly wrong?
Well, there's always an ebb and flow to politics. That's just a matter of fact, and we have had long periods in both in Scotland and in the rest of the UK where parties have had protracted periods of government. Now, a protracted period of government's great when you're able to deliver on your commitments, but when you take your eye off the ball and you lose sight of what it is you were elected to deliver on, and in this case I would disagree with Douglas Ross's comments about the SNP being obsessed with independence. Well, for many people in the SNP, in the Alpha Party and in the wider independence movement, that obsession has absolutely, there's no evidence of that. And that's one of the key issues that we've raised with the SNP, or rather Ash Regan has raised directly with the First Minister in our letter, which is to put some focus onto that, because the whole independence project requires the delivery of a competent government and competent governance, and that's something that's been sadly lacking over the last number of years. So we'd like to see that. We're also very concerned about the Green Party's influence over gender identity politics and the way the Scottish Government, particularly Nicola Sturgeon, was very supportive of that and was completely unwilling to listen to political voices.
Just very briefly, let's say he loses a vote of no confidence. Should we then see an election in Scotland? Should that be the natural consequence?
I think it's very difficult to see a circumstance where that isn't the result of the First Minister resigning. Okay. In a way that is convincing. So, for example, the Greens are saying last night, Ross Greer, one of the Green Party MSPs, was saying that they're holding out for the removal of Hamza Youssef and the installation of a new green compliant SNP MSP as First Minister. I don't think the Scottish public will tolerate that. That's for one thing.
This is what... I'll have to leave it there as time's running away. That's what I find so fascinating, of course, is this conversation. You can't have it without thinking about what's been happening down in Westminster, where we have had another unelected Prime Minister foisted on us without going to the country. 0345 6060 973 is the number for your thoughts. Is it the men that's the problem, Sunak and Youssef, or is it the party being in power too long? You're listening to Matthew Wright on LBC. Your calls to come. Plus joyous news as the King returns to royal duties next week. I'll find out exactly what that means after the latest LBC News headlines from Jenny Barsby.
The King has thanked the public for its support after announcing he's returning to public duties next week. A 64-year-old British man is in intensive care after he was attacked by a shark in the Caribbean. And the TUC says black and ethnic minority women are twice as likely to be on 0 hours contracts as white men. Wet and cloudy for Wales, central and southern England, sunny spells and showers elsewhere, and a high of 13 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. It's slow on the M25 clockwise. There's one lane closed between junction 5 for the M26 and Clackett Lane services for emergency repairs. On the A2 eastbound, there's a lane closed at the Ebbsfleet turn-off because a car has overturned. The North Circular northbound is closed from the M4 Chiswick roundabout to Gunnersbury Park because of roadworks. In Mayfair, Conduit Street southbound is closed from Regent Street to George Street because of an accident. On the Tube, there's no Victoria line between Walthamstow Central and Seven Sisters because of a points failure. There are severe delays on the northern line between Camden Town and High Barnet. That's because of an investigation. Because of engineering works, there's no service on the Bakerloo line. And because of a strike, Mansion House, Marylebone, Pimlico, Regent's Park and Southwark stations are all closed.
This is LBC.
Play Set for Life and you could.
우회전 하세요.
£10,000 every month for 30 years. Set for Life. Play now on the National Lottery app. Terms, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Did you know at TK Maxx you can find big brands up to 60% less than the RRP? I got this quilted leather handbag, must-have moisturizer and 3 pairs of branded jeans. Skinny, boyfriend, flared. All incredible savings. I'm basically a denim connoisseur. There's no deal like TK Maxx deal. Big brands, small prices. In-store and online.
School reunion. What am I doing getting these people together after all these years? The last time we shared, there was leg wars and rah skirts involved.
We can't help the uncertainty around getting old friends together. But when it comes
transfer all your old pensions into one place. To combine, go to standardlife.co.uk. Transferring pensions won't be right for everyone. Money invested is at risk. Provided by Phoenix Life Limited Trading and Standard Life. For full details, visit standardlife.co.uk.
Jump into a Skoda Plus approved used car with 11.4% APR representative plus £750 deposit contribution. Solutions PCP. 2 years servicing, 2 years warranty, 2 MOTs, and 2 years roadside assistance. 2 use when driving 2 places like your 2-year-old's tutu party in Tooting tomorrow. Skoda approved use event available from the 15th to the 29th of April. So visit your local retailer today. Skoda. Indemnities may be required at participating retailers. Vehicles up to 8 years and 100,000 miles at activation. Skoda Finance. Toodaloo.
McDonald's are making small improvements to our classic burgers, searing our 100% British and Irish beef patties so they're even juicier. And we're serving them hotter from meltier cheese, all in new toastier buns. The classics, now a little more Comparison with prior classic burgers served after 11 a.m. subject to availability.
Hi all.
How are we doing?
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Let's get this meeting started.
Where's the tablet gone? When everyone's home, EE Work Mode prioritizes your broadband for working from home with faster speeds in more places than anyone else. So,
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear as a bell.
This is broadband made for working from home. Search EE Broadband, powered by BT.
Work mode with EE Smart Hub Plus. To verify, see ee.co.uk/claims.
Matthew Wright on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Joanne messages, Matthew, do you think it's a symptom of power, a party being in power too long when one of their ministers is unaware that Congo and Rwanda are different countries? Jay in Milton Keynes messages, morning Matthew, the issue with having shorter terms of government would be nothing would ever get done because each party would claim they were not in power long enough. The wheels of bureaucracy move grindingly slow. We need MPs that have the right skill sets to run a country, not individual gains. Terence has given us a call coming from Clapton. Good morning to you, Terence.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Listening to what you're saying there, I think whoever the person was speaking before and yourself, you're both missing a huge point. It's not the fact that the relevant parties have been in power too long. It's the political system has been established too long. We need to change it. It doesn't work. We have this, what I call windscreen wiper politics of Labour, Tory, Brexit, Remain.
They have a different voting system in Scotland, several different voting systems.
Yeah, well, it's not working there. As you can see, you need to have proportional representation, which enables parties like the Greens. But
this is what they have in Scotland. So I don't understand what your point is. This is exactly what they have in Scotland.
Well, in actual fact, but Scotland's a slightly different case to England, because what you've got there, you've had this sort of run for independence, and therefore the SNP have been very, very vocal and popular on that. You've had the Greens are coming, and look, it's worked. The Greens are given...
With respect, Terence, though, I would suggest that the things that are most obvious to me are a party that's been in power for 17 years, and regardless of whatever their ideology is, just like Thatcher had her ideology, Blair had his vision, that these visions and ideologies, they might work, they might coalesce, the voters at the beginning, but as time goes on, I don't want to use words like corruption. I think that's more relevant perhaps down to Westminster. But the system, they get too comfortable perhaps and they're out of touch. And you end up, whether it be with the proportional representative system they have in Scotland or first past the post down in Westminster, it appears broken. It doesn't seem to work anymore, which is why perhaps neither party is rushing to go to the country and give us an election. That's what I'm wondering. When do we get to have a say?
Well, the problem is there's millions of people in England that don't have a say because they may vote for the Green Party and they are not getting the seats. Now, as I say, I'm not a Green Party member, so I'm not saying that, but it would be saying for every political viewpoint, They need to have a voice. People need to have a voice in government. So if that means negotiating, compromising, and then votes no confidence, so be it. It's a much better system.
Okay, but would you accept if you have a vote of no confidence and you oust the leader, the Scottish First Minister, say he goes, is it fair to just appoint another First Minister, or do you go to the country? That's really where I'm chasing with this discussion. Is it about politicians just replacing themselves? When do we get a say?
Well, then in that case, we have to pass a law where they call a general election that you have an unelected leader.
Wouldn't that? I hadn't thought that was a nice idea. Terence, lovely. Thank you for the call. Time is short. Let me just give you a flavour of the front pages today. The I newspaper details how the growth of US-style factory chicken farms is fueling a huge rise in ammonia, which can lead to health problems, heart and lung problems in humans. A 40% increase in ammonia gas in Wales, 20% in areas of Lincolnshire and Norfolk, where these chicken farms are allowed to proliferate. Within the Telegraph, we've got Home Secretary James Cleverly hitting back at critics who say over the Rwanda deportation scheme, and he says that critics are ignoring Rwanda's progress. James Cleverly, though, seemingly ignoring Rwanda's role in a proxy war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, he says that critics ignore Rwanda's problems, but he himself... he says critics ignore Rwanda's progress, but he himself seems to ignore Rwanda's problems. And then also, tangential to that, a story in the Eye and also in the Guardian, which is the government has started asking civil servants to relocate to Rwanda to help with the deportation programme. They're not being specific about numbers. I did see one report suggesting something between 4 and 8 people on short-term stays over there, maybe just a few weeks at a time, being rotated. Lovely job if you fancy it in the civil service. Now, I started the programme with the joyous news that the King, despite still being treated for cancer, we don't know what kind of cancer it is, he has made it clear that he's going to be returning to work from next week. I believe he's also going to be hosting the Japanese state visit, which is still to come in the early summer. Well, Michael Cole, a royal commentator, a former royal correspondent, joins me now. Good morning to you, Michael.
왼쪽 차선 유지
Good
후에
morning, Matthew. I
계속해서
think this story
직진하세요.
is completely wrapped up in that wonderful photograph of Buckingham Palace last night. There you see the King and the Queen laughing like a couple of newlyweds. That shot was taken on the first day of the 20th year of their marriage. And I think I've rarely seen the King look so happy, so fulfilled. I mean, that's against anything you would think at the time when he's battling a cancer, being treated for cancer. So perhaps the prognosis is partly the reason for his jollity there. It is, I think, when I think Hemingway described courage as form under pressure. And I think when you can show that sort of leadership, when you can show that sort of optimism, it's to his great credit. Now we will see what...
Of advanced years, doing so well with the treatment, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Michael Cole, lovely talking to you. Worth reminding ourselves, he is still being treated for that cancer. He's not yet through the other side of the treatment and into remission. You're listening to Matthew Wright on LBC. More of your calls to come. Plus,
when it comes to knife crime, a London problem or it's a ethnic problem, come on, let's just knock it off now, because too many young people are dying from this.
Great stuff from Idris Elba there. LBC can reveal that 5 children a day arrested for carrying a knife last year. The full scale of this devastating epidemic after the latest LBC News headlines from Jenny Barsby.
The King and Queen say they're grateful for the public's support after it was announced the King will return to public duties on Tuesday. Buckingham Palace says Charles has made very encouraging progress with his cancer treatment. The Russian ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over claims a British man's attacked Ukrainian-linked businesses on behalf of the Wagner Group. 20-year-old Dylan Earl is one of 5 men charged under the National Security Act, and it's claimed black and minority ethnic women are twice as likely to be on 0-hours contracts as white men. The TUC, which is behind the research, says this is a prime example of structural racism in action. LBC weather, wet and cloudy for Wales, central and southern England, sunny spells and showers elsewhere, a high of 13 degrees.
LBC.
hear that? It might sound like nothing to you, but it's actually the sound of nuclear, wind and solar energy. At EDF, we're busy generating more British zero-carbon electricity than anyone to help keep future energy costs down for everyone and help cut UK carbon emissions to nothing. Sound good to you? Find out more about our zero-carbon generation at edfenergy.com/helpingbritain.
Did you know that it takes just 30 seconds to get a quote from We Buy Any Car? And it took me just 3 seconds to tell you that. So, what am I meant to do now? Any ideas? Oh, I know.
직진하세요.
To find out how much your car's worth in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Admin fee may apply. For more information, visit WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
School reunion. What am I doing getting these people together after all these years? The last time we shared a room, there was like wars and massacres involved.
We can't help the uncertainty around getting old friends together. But when it comes to bringing your old pensions together, we can help. Transfer all your old pensions into one place. To combine, go to standardlife.co.uk. Transferring pensions won't be right for everyone. Money invested is at risk, provided by Phoenix Life Limited trading as Standard Life. For full details, visit standardlife.co.uk.
I never liked her anyway.
He's clearly a narcissist.
Well, she stopped. She's seeing the kids.
He negotiates for a living. Lawyer up and protect yourself.
We get it. You mean well. But when someone you love gets divorced, saying these things does more harm than good. That's where we come in. Amicable is a legal service that makes divorce kinder and simpler. No demonising, no aggression, just better outcomes for everyone. Amicable.co.uk. Divorce made kinder.
With the biggest range of cars to buy entirely online, it's no wonder everyone's cinching it.
I cinched it during spring class. Think I'm going to be sick.
I cinched it in this coffee shop.
What are you having?
A 5-door hatchback.
This is your captain speaking. I cinched it before takeoff with a 14-day money-back guarantee.
With so many great reasons to buy, the nation aren't just nailing it, they're cinching it. Comparison against equivalent retailers. Visit cinch.co.uk/range claim. Mileage restrictions and terms apply.
This is LBC with Matthew Wright. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850.
Return to your thoughts on leadership and power, whether Hamza Youssef and Rishi Sunak are failures as political leaders, both are tanking in their opinion polls, or whether it's actually the fact that it's more symptomatic of the parties, their respective parties being in power too long. 17 years for the SNP, 14 years for the Tories, although Welsh Labour, pretty sure they've been in power for 25 years. So if this is an issue of being in power too long, then Vaughan Gething better watch his back. First, though, I want to talk about knife crime. We've played a couple of clips out already of Idris Elba, who's been doing a really wonderful job since the start of this campaign, Don't Stop Your Future, earlier this year, in trying to persuade young people not to lose their lives to knife crime. He suggested that the government is more focused thinking on tackling XL bully dogs than the issue of knife crime. And his comments come as LBC revealed 5 children a day were arrested for carrying a knife last year. Over the first 10 months of 2023, around 1,500 children aged 16 or under were arrested for the possession of a knife or other sharp implements, screwdrivers, carving forks, even shards of glass. And Elba, he's focused most of his attention on sort of expediting this ban on zombie knives, which are due to be outlawed in England and Wales from September. Although I suspect the problem is much broader based than zombie knives. Well, I'm joined by Patrick Green, Chief Executive of the Ben Kinsella Trust. And for those of you that may not remember, too young, Ben Kinsella, a wonderful young man who lost his life while out celebrating, I think it was his GCSEs, more than 10 years ago now. Patrick is the Chief Exec of the Ben Kinsella Trust. Good morning to you, Patrick.
Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning. So, without wishing to sort of undermine all the good work that you and other anti-knife crime advocates have done over the years, it's pretty depressing to read how many kids under 16 are still carrying knives or blades or screwdrivers and such like.
Yeah, all the stats when it comes to knife crime are very depressing. You know, we've seen this week on Thursday the Office of National Statistics released the latest figures on knife crime. They're up 7% in the last year, at just over 49,000 offences. That's, you know, if you go back 10 years, it was 26,000 offences, so it's almost doubled in 10 years. And you're right to focus on young people. You know, the stats that you've spoken about the arrests that are made per day for young people are shocking. This shows, you know, that you have to get in much earlier. You have to talk to young people much earlier. And, you know, the work that we do at the Bank Centre Trust, you know, in Ben's name, is educating young people about the dangers of knife crime and changing their belief systems before they carry a knife, before they even think of carrying a knife. And, you know, we can show considerable success in, you know, helping young people live safer lives and avoid carrying knives. And I think, you know, if we look at what we haven't done, what we need to do over the last 16 years since Ben was murdered, it's getting in earlier and educating young people and helping, you know, to tackle this way upstream.
Knife crime doubled over this period of time, and I'm thinking back. I can remember when Ben was killed and the outrage and the upset and this feeling that we had to do something about it. Politicians for the last 20 odd years have been talking up, well, not so much recently, but used to talk up this idea of 3 strikes and you're out, there's automatic prison for knife crime and such like. None of that seems to have actually transpired, turned into reality. Do you believe that perhaps clearer, harsher sentencing punishments for knife crime would reduce the amount of, the number of young people carrying knives, or is that the wrong way about this problem?
No, legislation plays an important role in that. I mean, I've talked about education a few moments ago and how important that is, but legislation is equally important. You know, and you mentioned Idris; he's done a fantastic job. You know, particularly campaigning against zombie knives and banning of those and machetes. And I think that the clip that you mentioned earlier on about, you know, his comments, you know, relates to the feelings that he had in January. We since got the government moving on this. We have the ban going through Parliament. We expect an announcement in June. So legislation is really important. It's important because, you know, it's justice for those who've been victimised by knife crime, but it also is important because it's a deterrent. And we need strong deterrence as much as we need education. This is about a balanced approach to tackling this from both ends. You're also right about what you say about politicians. There's been a lot of strong rhetoric around knife crime, but that has not been backed up by actions.
So I was going to ask you, if you forgive me, and I don't want to put you in an awkward position because I know, you know, you're running a charity, but, you know, is Idris Elba right to essentially accuse the government of being more interested in dealing with dangerous dogs than children carrying knives?
You know, Idris made that comment way back before the ban came into being, and, you know, since then we've had the government move. You know, Idris is very passionate, very committed, and a very genuine campaigner here, and, you know, we're delighted to have Idris in this space, helping us to, you know, get really important messages out there and help move us along. And, you know, in a short period of time, Idris has achieved a fantastic amount, and we're very grateful for what he's done.
Patrick Green, pleasure talking to Patrick, their Chief Executive of the Ben Kinsella Trust. If you could pass on my regards to Brooke Kinsella, I'd appreciate it. Now then, Peter has been hanging on the line from Pontefract, wants to talk about leaders and governments being in power for too long. Good morning to you, Peter.
Hi, Matthew. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Do you share my view that perhaps being in power for too long, eventually the wheels come off the bus, whatever your party, whatever your political persuasion?
I think you might have a point there, but I think it's far more easy than that. I think you're looking for the difficult ways. I think the truth of the matter is that quite often